The emergency broadcast reached every corner of the galaxy at the same time. On hundreds of worlds, alien species stopped what they were doing to listen to the desperate message that came from the HFY Galactic Council. Ambassador Veltar of the Zentari stood before the massive communication array on their homeworld. His tall, thin body shook as he spoke into the transmitter. His people were known across the galaxy for their calm nature and wise words. But today, fear filled his voice. To all noble species of the galaxy, we send this plea for help, Veltar said. His large eyes looked directly into the camera that would carry his message to distant stars. An ancient evil has awakened. The void swarm has returned after sleeping. For 1,000 years. The message continued with images that made many aliens turn away in horror. Entire planets stripped bare of all life. Massive machine creatures that ate everything in their path and built more of themselves from the remains. 3-star systems had already fallen silent. We seek heroes, Veltar pleaded. Warriors of honor who will stand against the darkness. Champions who fight for what is right, not for reward. The legends speak of such beings among the stars. If you exist, please answer our call. The message ended with coordinates to the Zentari, homeworld, and a promise of eternal gratitude from all civilized species. On the edge of human space, Captain Jake Morrison sat in his command chair aboard the U's Valiant. The ship was new, built in the orbital yards above Earth just 2 years ago. It was one of humanity's dreadnought-class vessels, designed for one thing, war. Morrison was 45 years old, with gray hair and scars on his hands from the Martian Independence War. He had been fighting in space for 20 years. His ship carried enough firepower to level a small moon, and his crew knew how to use every weapon on board. "Sir, we're getting a strange transmission," said Commander Lisa Hayes from her station. She was Morrison's tactical officer, a woman with sharp eyes who could calculate the best way to destroy an enemy ship in seconds. "It's coming from outside our space." "Put it on screen," Morrison ordered. The bridge crew watched the alien's desperate plea in silence. When it ended, Chief Engineer Tony Rodriguez let out a low whistle. He was a stocky man who had spent his life building and fixing war machines. "Those things sound nasty," Rodriguez said. "Look at what they did to those planets." Hayes pulled up star charts on her screen. The affected systems are resource-rich. Lots of rare metals and energy sources. If these void swarm things keep expanding, they'll control some valuable territory. Morrison leaned back in his chair and smiled. It was not a kind smile. "They want heroes, do they?" "That's what the aliens said," Hayes replied. "Warriors of honor who fight for what's right." Rodriguez laughed. "Boss, we haven't fought for honor since, well, ever. We fight to win." The captain stood up and walked to the main view screen. Outside, stars filled the darkness of space. Many of those stars had planets that humans wanted. Planets with resources that could fuel humanity's growing empire. "Hayes, send a message to Fleet Command," Morrison said. "Tell them we have an opportunity. A chance to expand human influence into new territory." "Sir, the aliens are asking for help against a real threat," Hayes pointed out. "These void swarm machines have destroyed entire worlds." Morrison turned to face his tactical officer. "And we'll help them. We'll solve their problem permanently. But first, let's see what these aliens are offering in return." 3 days later, Admiral Peter Clark received Morrison's report aboard his flagship, the UES Retribution. Clark was the commander of the Third Fleet, 12 warships that patrolled humanity's border regions. He was a tall man with cold eyes, who had earned his rank by winning battles that others thought were impossible. Clark read the alien message again and called his senior officers to a meeting. Around the table sat the captains of his most powerful ships. Captain Sandra White of the UES Vengeance, Captain Bob Turner of the UES Dominator, and Captain Morrison, who had brought this opportunity to their attention. "Gentlemen, ladies," Clark began, "we have been invited to save the galaxy." The officers laughed at his tone. They all knew Clark well enough to understand what he really meant. "The aliens want heroes," continued Captain White. "People who fight for honor and justice." "They want someone to solve their problem and then disappear," added Captain Turner. "Leave them to rebuild in peace." Clark nodded. "That's exactly what they want. But that's not what they're going to get." He activated a holographic display that showed the galaxy. Red markers indicated the systems already destroyed by the Void Swarm. Blue markers showed human territory. Green markers showed the space controlled by the aliens who had sent the distress call. "Look at this," Clark said, pointing to the green areas. "Rich systems, advanced technology, established trade routes. And now they're desperate enough to invite unknown military forces into their space." Morrison understood immediately. "You want to respond to their call." "I want to save them from their problem," Clark replied, "completely and permanently. And then I want them to understand that salvation has a price." Captain White studied the star charts. "How many ships are we talking about?" "The full fleet." Clark answered. 12 dreadnoughts with full support vessels. Enough firepower to crack planets if necessary. "The aliens expect individual heroes," pointed out Captain Turner. "Knights in shining armor. What they'll get is an industrial war machine." Clark smiled the same cold smile that Morrison had worn 3 days earlier. Sometimes the best way to deal with monsters is to send bigger monsters. The Admiral activated his communication system and sent a response to the alien broadcast. The message was simple and direct. "This is Admiral Peter Clark of the Human Defense Force. We received your call for help. Our fleet will arrive at your coordinates in 10 days. Prepare for immediate military operations against the Void Swarm. We will solve your problem." As the message transmitted across space toward the Zentari homeworld, Clark turned back to his officers. "Prepare the fleet for departure. Full combat loadout. And remember, we're not going there to be heroes. We're going there to win." The officers returned to their ships to make ready for war. None of them had any idea that their response would change the balance of power in the galaxy forever. They only knew that an opportunity had presented itself, and humanity had never been good at refusing opportunities. In 10 days, the aliens would get their answer to the desperate plea for heroes. But heroes were not what was coming to save them. 10 days later, the human fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Zentari star system. 12 massive warships appeared on every sensor screen across the alien homeworld. The ships were dark gray metal, covered in weapon ports and armor plating. They looked like what they were, machines built for killing. Ambassador Veltar stood in the main control room of the Zentari space station, watching the approaching fleet on his screens. His hands shook as he counted the human vessels. He had expected maybe one ship carrying a small group of noble warriors. Instead, an entire armada was heading toward his world. "Send them a welcome message," Veltar told his communications officer. "Tell them we are grateful for their response to our call for help." The reply came back within minutes. It was short and direct. "This is Admiral Clark. We are here to eliminate the Void Swarm threat. Prepare your people for immediate military briefing. We will begin combat operations within 48 hours. Veltar blinked his large eyes in confusion. The message sounded more like a military order than a greeting from heroes coming to save them. 3 hours later, a human shuttle landed on the Zentari space station. Ambassador Veltar waited in the main meeting hall with other representatives from the Galactic Council. The room was decorated with beautiful artwork and symbols of peace from dozens of different worlds. The airlock opened and 6 humans walked out. They wore dark military uniforms, covered in rank insignia and equipment belts. The leader was a tall man with gray hair and cold eyes, who moved like a predator. "I am Admiral Peter Clark," the man said without any formal greeting. "These are my senior officers. We need to discuss your tactical situation immediately." Veltar stepped forward and bowed in the traditional Zentari manner. "Welcome, honored heroes. We are grateful that you have answered our call. I am Ambassador Veltar, and these are representatives from the civilized worlds of this sector." Admiral Clark looked around the room at the gathered aliens. Most were tall and thin like the Zentari. Others were short and covered in fur. All of them looked at the humans with hopeful expressions. "We're not heroes," Clark said bluntly. "We're soldiers. Show us the data on this void swarm." The aliens exchanged confused glances. This was not how heroes were supposed to act. Heroes were supposed to be noble and inspiring. These humans looked like they were here to conduct business. Dr. Amanda Foster, the fleet's xenobiologist, stepped forward with a recording device. She was a woman with sharp features who studied alien species for military intelligence purposes. "We need complete information on enemy capabilities, numbers, and tactical doctrine." Veltar activated a holographic display that showed the galaxy. Red areas marked the systems that had been destroyed by the void swarm. 3 entire star systems have fallen silent. Billions of lives lost. The machines consume everything and use it to build more of themselves. Captain Marison, who had come with the Admiral's group, studied the display with professional interest. "What's the estimated number of enemy units?" "We do not know exactly," replied a furry alien named Counselor Threx. "Our scouts report massive swarms of machine creatures, each the size of a small building." "Weapons capabilities?" asked Commander Hayes, taking notes on a small computer. "They use energy beams and projectile weapons," Veltar answered, "but their real power is in their numbers. They overwhelm defenders through sheer mass." Chief Engineer Rodriguez pointed to one of the destroyed systems on the map. "What kind of industrial base do they have?" The aliens looked confused by the question. Counselor Threx spoke up. "Industrial base? They are monsters, not manufacturers." Rodriguez shook his head. "If they're building more of themselves, they need factories. Raw materials, supply lines, everything has logistics." Admiral Clark stepped closer to the holographic map. "Show us detailed scans of the affected systems." When the images appeared, the humans studied them with cold calculation. Where the aliens saw horror and tragedy, the humans saw tactical data. The destroyed planets had been stripped of metals and converted into manufacturing centers. Massive space stations orbited dead worlds, clearly pumping out new void swarm units. "Standard hive mind expansion pattern," observed Dr. Foster. "Central control nodes coordinating autonomous manufacturing. Efficient but vulnerable to systems. Disruption." Veltar felt growing unease as he listened to the humans discuss the void swarm like it was a business problem. "Honored warriors, surely you feel anger at these atrocities? The billions of innocent lives lost?" Admiral Clark looked at the alien ambassador with his cold gray eyes. "Anger doesn't win wars. Planning wins wars." Captain Morrison pulled out a detailed star chart and spread it on the meeting table. "We'll need staging areas for our fleet operations, fuel depot locations, repair facilities." "Of course," Veltar said quickly. "Anything you need. We are prepared to support your heroic efforts." Commander Hayes looked up from her computer. "We've identified 17 critical infrastructure points in your territory that need immediate protection. Military bases, communication centers, manufacturing facilities." "Why do you need to know about our infrastructure?" asked Counselor Threx suspiciously. "Because we protect what's valuable," Hayes replied matter-of-factly. "Standard operating. Procedure. Dr. Foster finished scanning the alien tactical data and closed her recording device. Admiral, I recommend immediate deployment to the Korvax system. It's the most recent Void Swarm conquest and shows the highest concentration of enemy manufacturing. Agreed, Clark said. He turned back to the gathered aliens. We'll begin combat operations tomorrow. Keep your ships out of the combat zone. This will not be a clean fight. Veltar stepped forward desperately. But surely you want to know about the heroic traditions of our people? The noble cause you fight for? The gratitude of billions across the galaxy? Admiral Clark was already walking toward the airlock. We know what we're fighting for, he said without looking back. As the humans left the meeting hall, the aliens stood in stunned silence. This was not what they had expected at all. Heroes were supposed to be inspiring. They were supposed to care about justice and righteousness. These humans acted like they were planning a business operation. What have we done? Whispered Counselor Threx. Veltar watched the human shuttle depart through the station's viewports. Below them, the 12 human warships hung in space, like dark threats against the stars. Each ship bristled with weapons that could crack continents. We asked for heroes to save us, Veltar said quietly. I think instead we have invited predators into our home. But it was too late to change their minds now. The humans were here, and they were ready to solve the Void Swarm problem in their own way. The aliens were about to learn that sometimes salvation comes at a price they never expected to pay. The human fleet began moving toward the outer system, heading for the first battle against the Void Swarm. But Ambassador Veltar could not shake the feeling that they had made a terrible mistake in calling for help. The human fleet reached the Korvax system 12 hours ahead of schedule. What they found there made even the experienced military officers pause for a moment. The planet that had once been home to 6 million aliens was now a twisted ball of metal and machinery. Massive factories covered the surface, pumping black smoke into the poisoned atmosphere. Admiral Clark stood on the bridge of the U.S. Retribution, watching the tactical displays update with new information. Thousands of Void Swarm units moved around the planet like angry insects. Each machine was the size of a building and covered in weapons. Sir, we're detecting industrial operations across the entire planet, reported Lieutenant Commander Sam Davis from the sensor station. They've converted everything into manufacturing centers. Captain Morrison's voice came over the communication system from his ship, the U.S. Valiant. Admiral, my tactical team counts over 10,000 enemy units in orbit. More launching from the surface every minute. Dr. Foster, who was monitoring the enemy signals from her science station, looked up with interest. They're using the planet's core as a power source. Very efficient. They'll be able to produce units indefinitely at this rate. Ambassador Veltar sat in the observer's chair that Admiral Clark had allowed him to use. The alien was there to witness what he hoped would be a heroic battle between good and evil. He expected to see brave human warriors charging forward to face the enemy in glorious combat. Admiral, Veltar said nervously, surely you'll give the Void Swarm a chance to surrender? Or at least warn them before you attack. Clark turned to look at the alien with the same expression he might use when looking at a broken machine. Ambassador, we're not here to have a conversation. We're here to solve a problem. The Admiral activated his fleet communication system. All ships, this is Clark. Target the planet for complete sterilization. No survivors, no structures left standing. We remove this threat permanently. Veltar jumped up from his chair. What? You cannot destroy an entire world. What about the historical sites? The cultural artifacts? Surely there is another way. There is another way, Clark replied calmly. It would take longer and cost more human lives. I prefer this way. Captain Morrison's voice crackled over the speakers. "Admiral, enemy units are moving to intercept." "Looks like they want to fight." "Perfect," Clark said. "All ships execute Burning Sky Protocol." Veltar had never heard of Burning Sky Protocol. Within 30 seconds, he understood what it meant. Every human ship opened fire at the same time. The space around Korvax Prime lit up like a new star as thousands of weapons fired at once. The Void Swarm machines tried to fight back, but they had no chance. They were designed to overwhelm enemies through numbers and persistence. The humans simply had more firepower than anything the machines had ever faced. Captain Sandra White, commanding the UES Vengeance, led a group of destroyers in hunting down fleeing enemy units. Her ships moved through space like wolves chasing rabbits. There were no dramatic duels or last-minute saves. The humans just surrounded each group of enemies and destroyed them with concentrated fire. "Target destroyed," White reported. "Over there." "Communication system. Moving to next group." Lieutenant Colonel Steve Morgan commanded the ground forces that deployed to the planet's surface. His Marines landed in heavily armored dropships and immediately began clearing the remaining factories. But they did not charge forward like heroes in the stories. Instead, they advanced slowly behind rolling artillery barrages. "Sector 7 cleared," Morgan reported to Admiral Clark. "Flamethrower teams are sanitizing the area now." Veltar watched the tactical displays in growing horror. The humans were not fighting a battle. They were conducting an extermination. Every Void Swarm unit was marked, tracked, and destroyed with mechanical efficiency. "This is not how heroes fight," he whispered. Dr. Foster heard him and looked up from her workstation. "Ambassador, heroes fight to look good. We fight to win." Chief Engineer Rodriguez had been busy during the battle, analyzing captured Void Swarm technology. "Admiral, I figured out how their networking system operates. I can build a virus that will turn their own communication systems against them." "Do it," Clark ordered. "How long do you need?" "Give me 6 hours," Rodriguez replied. "I'll have something that will make their heads explode." The battle for Korvax Prime lasted 8 hours. When it was over, nothing remained of the Void Swarm presence. The planet was a dead ball of cooling metal, its atmosphere burned away by human weapons. 11,000 enemy units had been destroyed without a single human casualty. Admiral Clark studied the after-action reports with satisfaction. "Efficient work. All ships prepare for jump to the next infected system." Veltar stared at the ruined planet on the main screen. "You destroyed everything." "The entire world is gone. The threat is gone," Clark corrected. "That was the objective. But there might have been survivors on the planet. Aliens who were enslaved by the machines. You could have saved them." Captain Morrison's image appeared on the communication screen. "Ambassador, our sensors detected no life signs except the machines. If there were survivors, they died when the Void Swarm took the planet." "You do not know that for certain?" Veltar protested. Dr. Foster turned away from her science station. "Actually, we do. The Void Swarm converts all organic matter into raw materials for manufacturing. Biological life cannot survive their occupation. The planet was already dead when we arrived." Veltar fell back into his chair, overwhelmed by what he had witnessed. This was not the heroic battle he had expected. The humans had simply erased a problem from existence, without any regard for glory or honor. "This is not how the legends say heroes should fight," he said weakly. "We're not legendary heroes," Admiral Clark replied. "We're practical soldiers. Heroes fight fair. We fight to win." The human fleet jumped to faster-than-light travel, heading for the next Void Swarm stronghold. Behind them, the Korvax system was empty except for drifting debris and cooling metal. Rodriguez had finished his virus program and was already planning improvements. "Next time, I'll have something that can corrupt their manufacturing systems too, he told Dr. Foster. Make them build defective units that fall apart. Excellent work, she replied. The more efficiently we can eliminate them, the sooner we can move on to more interesting projects. Veltar listened to the humans discuss their next attack with the same tone they might use to talk about fixing a broken machine. They showed no excitement about their victory, no sadness for the destroyed world, no concern about the moral implications of their actions. They were not heroes at all. They were something much more dangerous. They were problem solvers who had no interest in leaving problems partially solved. The ambassador began to understand that his people might have made the worst mistake in galactic history when they called for help. 3 weeks after the destruction of Corvax Prime, the human fleet found the Void Nexus. The massive space station hung in empty space between two dead stars, a metal monster the size of a small moon. Millions of Void Swarm units moved around. It like blood cells in mechanical veins. Admiral Clark stood on the bridge of the UES Retribution, studying the tactical displays. His fleet had grown during their campaign against the machines. Captured Void technology had been reverse-engineered and added to human weapons. The ships were now more dangerous than when they had first arrived in alien space. Sir, the Nexus appears to be the central control node for the entire Void Swarm, reported Dr. Foster from her science station. Our analysis shows it coordinates all machine activities across multiple star systems. Ambassador Veltar sat in his observer chair, looking older and more tired than when the campaign had started. He had watched the humans destroy 7 Void Swarm strongholds with the same cold efficiency they had shown at Corvax Prime. No dramatic battles, no heroic sacrifices, just systematic extermination. So this is their leader? Veltar asked hopefully. Perhaps you can negotiate with it? Find a peaceful solution? Captain Morrison's voice came over the communication system from the UES Valiant. Ambassador, machines don't negotiate. They follow programming. And their programming says to consume everything. Chief Engineer Rodriguez had been working on his special project for the entire campaign. Admiral, the black hole device is ready for deployment. One shot, and everything within a light-year radius gets erased from existence. Veltar jumped up from his chair in alarm. A black hole weapon? That is against every law of civilized warfare. You cannot use such a device. Admiral Clark turned to look at the alien with his cold gray eyes. Ambassador, we're not fighting a civilized war. We're exterminating an infestation. Sometimes you need to use the right tool for the job. But surely you want to study their central intelligence first. Veltar pleaded. Learn how they think? Understand their motivations? Dr. Foster looked up from her computer. We already know how they think. They're programmed to convert all matter into more machines. There's nothing else to understand. The human fleet moved into attack formation around the Void Nexus. The machines detected their approach and began launching defensive units. Millions of Void Swarm fighters poured out of the station like angry insects. All ships maintain distance. Admiral Clark ordered, do not engage the enemy fighters. We only need to keep them busy for 10 minutes. Captain Sandra White, commanding. The destroyer squadron led her ships in a fighting retreat. The human vessels fired just enough to keep the Void Swarm units chasing them, drawing them away from the Nexus. Lieutenant Colonel Steve Morgan prepared his ground forces for a different kind of mission. All units prepare for rapid extraction. After device deployment, we will have exactly 3 minutes to clear the area. Rodriguez activated the black hole weapon from the UES Retribution's engineering bay. The device was small, about the size of a briefcase, but it contained enough compressed matter to create a temporary singularity. Device armed and ready, Rodriguez reported. Deployment in 60 seconds. Veltar watched the countdown timer on the main screen with growing despair. This is not how heroes win. Heroes face their enemies in fair combat. They give them a chance to surrender. Heroes die gloriously and leave messes for other people to clean up, Commander Hayes said from her tactical station. We prefer to solve problems permanently. The black hole device launched from the UES Retribution in a simple missile casing. It had no special markings or dramatic appearance. It looked like any other piece of military equipment. Admiral Clark did not give a speech. He did not challenge the enemy to final combat. He did not even bother to send a warning message to the Void Nexus. The device simply flew toward the target in silence. All ships, emergency jump in 10 seconds, Clark ordered. Maximum distance. From detonation point, the human fleet vanished into faster-than-light travel just as the device reached the Void Nexus. Veltar found himself staring at empty space, where millions of enemy machines had been just moments before. Is it over? He asked quietly. Wait for it, Dr. Foster said, checking her instruments. The explosion came 8 seconds later. Space itself seemed to tear apart as the artificial black hole consumed everything within range. The Void Nexus, the defensive fighters, 3 nearby asteroids, and even light itself disappeared into the hungry darkness. When the effect ended, nothing remained. The Void Swarm's central intelligence was gone, taking with it the coordination for billions of machines across dozens of star systems. All enemy units should lose network connectivity within the hour, Rodriguez reported with satisfaction. Without central control, they'll just shut down. Admiral Clark studied the tactical displays as reports came in from across the galaxy. Void Swarm units were indeed going dormant as they lost contact with their destroyed command center. The threat that had terrorized civilized space for months was ending with a whimper. Mission accomplished, Clark announced to his fleet. Threat eliminated. Begin salvage operations on all former Void strongholds. Veltar stared at the empty space where the enemy had been. That's it? It's over? The Void Swarm is finished, Dr. Foster confirmed. Their manufacturing centers are offline. Their coordination is broken. Any remaining units will be easy to hunt down. But what about the victory celebration? The songs that will be sung about your heroic deeds? The monuments that will be built in your honor? Captain Morrison's face appeared on the communication screen, showing a slight smile. Ambassador, we're not here for monuments. We're here for results. Admiral Clark walked over to the star charts that covered one wall of the bridge. He pointed to the systems that had been liberated from the Void Swarm. Rich worlds full of rare metals and energy sources. Advanced manufacturing facilities that could be repaired and put back into operation. The threat is eliminated, Clark said calmly. Now we can discuss our compensation for services rendered. Veltar felt his blood turn cold. Compensation? But you are heroes. Heroes do not ask for payment. We're not heroes, Commander Hayes said matter-of-factly. We're contractors. And contractors expect to be paid for their work. Dr. Foster turned away from her science station with a satisfied expression. The former Void systems contain enough resources to support human expansion for the next 50 years. Very convenient. Rodriguez was already analyzing the captured enemy technology. Admiral, with what we've learned from the machines, we can upgrade our entire fleet. Make it twice as powerful as it was before. Admiral Clark nodded approvingly. Excellent work, everyone. Ambassador, we'll be sending survey teams to the liberated systems within the week. For security purposes, of course. Veltar realized with growing horror that the humans had not just defeated the Void Swarm. They had studied it, learned from it, and made themselves stronger. The galaxy's greatest threat had been replaced by something potentially worse. What have we done? He whispered. Commander Hayes delivered the final truth as she watched human colony ships heading toward former Centauri trade routes. You wanted heroes, Ambassador. Heroes die gloriously and leave others to clean up the mess. We're not heroes. We're survivors. And survivors take what they need to keep surviving. The alien had called for champions to save the galaxy. Instead, he had invited wolves into the fold. The void swarm was gone, but humanity was here to stay.